So we all know why Skeet Ulrich was in here. Of course, haha, he was in here with Matthew Lillard again because, Scream and all that. He doesn't have a huge part in FNAF 2, but it was nice to see him on screen anyway. So, Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I saw this yesterday, first available showtime up here in Jersey, where I am right now. My overall takeaway is that it's okay. There was some stuff wrong with it, and I didn't enjoy it as much as I did the first one. But I think that fans of the games will probably appreciate some of the nods to certain things that are in here that someone like me has no idea about, so it just goes right over my head. The audience that I was with seemed fairly enthusiastic about the movie. There was some applause at the end. Okay, it was directed by the same person who did the first one, and apparently the story for this one was written completely by the FNAF game creator. I didn't realize if he was involved in the writing of the first one, it wasn't solely his, but this time, apparently it was. The film starts off with a prologue set in 1982 that leads into the main story. It introduces another Freddy's location that at first I didn't realize that's what that was because I've only seen the first film once and I kind of forgot what the location looked like, but this is a different location. Apparently this is the original one. So that was initially confusing to me, but once I figured it out, it was fine. The prologue that takes place in 1982, like I said, it leads into the main story because there's a character from 82 that is directly involved in what's going on it's not current day, it's actually 20 years later. I had forgotten that the first FNAF takes place in early 2000s, so this story is supposed to be taking place in 2002. So obviously they don't have things like the cell phones that we have. The internet is not really being used as extensively as what's going on today, which of course ties into why there are some communication issues. It's not quite as easy to get a hold of someone back in 2002 on the spur of the moment as it can be today. The three main characters return, and Abby is in the midst of dealing with a lot of sadness from losing her friends from the first one. And so that is a recurring issue. And of course, we have a return of the animatronics. And I don't really have an issue as far as those types of things, like the visual effects, the special effects of the animatronics. That was fine. It's got that typical horror type of, gateway horror type of atmosphere going on, characters making dumb decisions like they typically do in horror films. I'll give you an example. A man falls into some water, like in a tunnel, and he chooses to keep going deeper into the tunnel instead of just backtracking the way he came when it's apparent to him that something shady's going on, stuff like that. So of course, in my mind is these people deserve what's coming to them because they're being really dumb. Other things that happen in here that I kind of had an issue with and just sort of internally rolled my eyes was the questionable conveniences and contrivances that occur with some events, like animatronics appearing out of nowhere stealthily like a ninja, whereas all the other times they're walking, it's this very deep like that. And then they managed to just sneak up on the main character at one point, standing right there in front of him, and he never knows it. And it's not just a little tiny animatronic, it's a big huge one. And also lights. Does nobody use lights anymore? I swear to goodness. Why do people walk into dark areas and not attempt to light it? This happens at least once in here. That was annoying. I already mentioned coincidences, but there is one scene where some animatronics appear on top of someone's car, and it's not even clear how that happened, how she never heard them get on top of her car because she was in the car. And these are not light objects. They're heavy. And then they just take her by surprise by appearing on top of her car. Okay, I already mentioned Skeet. I don't have a problem with Skeet and Matthew being in here, but don't let their name in the cast credits fool you. They do not have a significant part in here. They're both in only one scene, and they're in separate scenes, so they're not even together. So don't expect something like that's going to happen. And the casting of Skeet, while I like Skeet, it did feel like more of a fan service for those of us who like Scream and horror movies. It's okay, it's all right. I wish they would have utilized both of those men a little bit more, but given what happened to Matthew's character in the first one, there's only so much they can do, right? Compared to the first movie, which it's not like it was that deep of a film, though I did enjoy it for the most part. There is a significant lack of character development, really, or growth in this particular story. It honestly just feels kind of like more of the same with these main characters. This doesn't feel like a film that is focused much at all on actual story depth or character depth, as opposed to just throwing around some Easter eggs for fans of the game. I think that if you want to appeal to an audience outside of the FNAF game realm, you need to have something within these movies that give it appeal to those outside of that circle. And this film doesn't really move that needle forward much. Heavy on the fan service, but not so much on story quality. So not really enough depth for newcomers. However, if you've seen this one, I would think that you would have seen the first one, so you're not necessarily a newcomer, but let's just say newcomers to the franchise. Those who are not into the games, like I am not. I think my nephews will probably enjoy it. We'll see. I'm going to take them on Friday. There is a mid-credit scene to stick around for if you're interested. And that is something that definitely feels like a strong setup for a third movie. Well, the ending of this movie is clearly a setup for another. But what shows up in the mid-credits is just an expansion on what's probably going to be happening in the third film. I did not stay past that part because what I had read was only this about this mid-credit scene, and I was ready to come back home, so I didn't stay further. But apparently there is some sort of audio or something at the very, very end. I don't know what it is, but if you're a diehard fan, stick around for that, I guess. Don't blame me if it ends up feeling like a huge disappointment. I'm just kind of passing along what I heard. I don't know for sure what it is. One of my fellow movie critics, Anthony A. Perez, made a comment in his written review for this film, which is on the Latino Slant, by the way. I'll try to remember to link it in the description. But I'm going to read what he said here because it encapsulates how I feel about this film, except in a much better way than I think I've probably done so far. He said, "I had fun in certain moments. Yeah, appreciated the attempt to honor the games visually and mechanically, but this sequel does little to pull in new fans, which I kind of already said. It feels designed more as a reward for existing super fans than as a strong standalone horror film." Now, I have seen what the official critics think about this movie, and it is much worse than what they thought about the first one, which wasn't very good. I think it was like in the 30s, the first one. This one, it's in the teens. So even worse, and I do agree that this isn't up there with the first one. Not that the first one was stellar, but on this one, the fans and the critics are not going to see eye to eye. I think, as I've already said, fans of the games are generally going to appreciate it. Purists might have a problem with some of the stories. I do have a feeling that there are liberties taken with the storylines from the games. Some fans might not like that. Some fans might be all right. I don't really care because I'm just one of those people that doesn't know. So in this case, maybe my ignorance is a good thing. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now about Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Let me know what you think if you get around to watching the film. All right, you guys. Bye.